Daddy! Hey!
Sugar!
Hey, what's this, huh? Hey, it's about time you stopped by to see me.
Well, I thought you might like to go riding.
You mean it?
I'm taking the day off.
All right! I didn't know you took days off.
Hi, Molly.
Where have you been, stranger? Huh?
I've been real busy.
Oh, boy. Same old trouble, huh?
My kind of trouble doesn't take vacations.
So aren't you going to tell Dad the big news? Oh, honey. Mama.
What news?
Well, Jim, I got this real good job in Las Cruces.
Las Cruces?
And we're going to move there in 2 weeks.
What do you mean you're gonna move?
Now, don't get yourself all worked up. I'm an independent woman now, and I've got my own life to live.
I know, but you can make your life right here.
Oh, come on, Jim. It's a nice town. It'll be good for Sally. Honey.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Layer Kicker. Coen brothers stand up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel. Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeakquel. There's so many new ways to revisit Sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, starfighters, cowboys, and armadillos. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode, we are in the Lone Star State. Despite the fact that this is only the second largest state, it's known for everything here being bigger. It's the home to the largest patio chairs, the largest fire hydrant, and King Ranch, America's biggest ranch, which is larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. But some things here are small, such as the Newby McMahon building, which is the world's smallest skyscraper, Stonehenge 2, a tiny replica of actual Stonehenge, and State Treasurer Charlie Lockhart, who was America's shortest elected official at only 3 feet and 9 inches tall. This state is the birthplace of Whole Foods Market, Dr. Pepper, and breast implants. That's right, we're in Texas. Dan, what's something that's bigger out where you live in Washington State?
Okay. I'm laughing at the idea that in the state where things are bigger, breast implants were invented. I know I don't need to call that out. But I'm just, okay. All right. So what is bigger in Washington State, where I have lived now for 8.5 years? So, I guess, Bigfoot.
Sure.
Is the legend of Bigfoot, of Sasquatch, the mythos is bigger in these parts. I guess also the trees are bigger.
Yeah.
Certainly compared to, just to tell you where I'm coming from, like the New York City / New York City suburbs. So the idea of like lush forests that, reach towards the heavens was something new to me 8.5 years ago. The mountains are bigger out here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Seahawks, the fanaticism around a football team.
Okay. Well, Dan, I mean, I feel like fanaticism around a football team, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys might have something to say about that.
Well, I think the people
if we're just talking Texas,
the people who consider themselves the quote unquote 12th man. So the fans that have their own jersey, the Seahawks Nation, I'm sure they would be happy to defend their fandom against any other fandom. And I mean, this is coming from, I would say the Giants and we were a Jets family growing up.
Right. Our father loved an underdog, I guess.
Yes. I mean, as do many of us. The Jets are always going to be my sentimental favorite. I don't really get emotionally involved in football. But I'm always going to root for the Jets. If I'm at a game and even if they're playing against the Seahawks, I'm still going to root for the Jets. However, if the Giants came to town, I might not be so likely to go against the grain, and I would be more likely to fall in line and root for the Seahawks. Whereas back in the New York, New Jersey area, the Giants are definitely the bigger. They have a bigger like cult around them, much like the Yankees do. Though the Yankees just have like global fandom, where they're more of a brand. And of course, I'm a New York Mets fan.
Well, I think that also with the Yankees, there's the big rivalry with Boston.
Yeah.
That's a fun element. I think that Boston sports, that's where you get some real fanatics. Philadelphia sports, you get some real fanatics, especially the Eagles.
Philadelphia sports fans, yeah, that's a different level because they will burn the city down if they win or lose. It'll either be like a celebratory fire or a like, I actually worry for the teams that beat Philly because I'm like, they just need to get, they could get on the turn. I'm like, if Atlanta beats Philly or something, like they'll get on they should go burn your city down. Like,
yeah, look out.
No, Philly fans definitely they're
a special breed,
a reputation for just fanaticism about Philly sports. Doesn't matter who it is. I would say in Seattle, there's definitely like the Mariners have a strong following despite their Mets-like tendency to dash the hopes of their fans before the leaves start to change color, which they don't really do in Seattle.
The leaves don't change color in Seattle?
Well, they do, but it's not as much of a process as so, all right, I will compare the autumn in the Northeast, where you see the gradual change, just the very gradual, dissolve from the lush greens of summer to the umbers, the deep reds, the oranges, the browns of autumn. And you have much more of an autumn there. In Seattle, it's kind of like a week. There's like a week, and then just like any of the trees that have leaves that fall off, like they're done. It's okay.
Where I live in Portland, Oregon, not too far from where you are in Seattle, we get way more than a week of autumn. We get the full autumn experience. I don't know what the difference is.
No, maybe I don't know if it's an elevation deal. I don't know if it's just like we're surrounded by mountains. I don't know what it is. I don't claim to be a scientist.
I don't know. Yeah. And kind of going back to your Bigfoot and trees, I think that California might have some things to say about the redwoods and also having Sasquatch.
Yes. I mean, look, there's a lot of other things that I could say, but I do live in Washington State and want to be, respectful. Like there's definitely a lot of, but this is not a state that really goes for being like,
it's not a boastful state.
No. The general attitude is like, and maybe it's just Seattle, but it's kind of like, we're good.
Yeah.
We're cool. I mean, there's definitely some extremes. And I would say actually something that's bigger in Seattle is the likelihood of demonstration. So
sure.
the protests.
Well, and you're talking specifically Seattle.
Right. Well, maybe not. And right. I am talking specifically Seattle, but also the people will come from out of town depending on what's going on. So yeah, because if you go east of, Seattle's very liberal, but if you cross through the mountains, not even, and you're getting into some really red areas.
Yeah. Very similar to Portland.
We're
living in two bubbles.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that the bubble is not bigger, but it's thicker here.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So go on.
Oregon and Washington, they're very similar in size, and they're very similar also just in the sense that you'll have those little bubbles, and then anything outside of those bubbles is very far in the other direction, we'll say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what is bigger in Oregon?
In Oregon, what is bigger? Well, we also have some pretty sweet mountains. We do have the opposite of bigger. We have the world's smallest park, Mills End Park. We're very proud of that here in Portland. In Oregon, though, if there's anything that's bigger, I don't know. Income tax?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's definitely up there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. In those regards, I suppose we could revisit definitely the Seattle area as well.
Well, doesn't Washington have no income tax or very low income tax?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I forget what it is.
You don't
not the
handle
one who
the
handles
books.
Numbers in this house. I handle words.
Yeah. But on this episode, we're talking Texas.
We are talking Texas, not taxes.
Texas, not taxes. And it's, I was thinking about this the other day. I feel like it's the state that's the state that's shape best represents what it is, its vibe. I feel like the look of Texas is just like, yeah, that looks like Texas. It looks like it's wearing a cowboy hat. It looks like something's going on there.
There's almost like a part of it that looks, sorry to interrupt, there's almost a part of it that looks like a part of a T.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it definitely captures the vibe, the essence of Texas just in its shape alone. And its mass.
I agree with that. I don't, and I can't put into words like why, but totally agree with that. Have you been to Texas?
Dan, you're asking me a question
Austin.
you already know the answer to.
Yeah, we were in Austin together. Austin is a bubble. Have you been to Texas?
I have only been to Texas aside from Austin, which, talking about bubbles, the ultimate bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, I've passed through the Houston airport, Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, as outside of the airports there, really not so much. I've really enjoyed the times that I've visited Austin. I think I've been there maybe 3 or 4 times. And it's always been great. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast. Yeah. It's a place where you and I went with our brother Scott before the pandemic struck.
We recorded in an episode, our Pee-wee episode there. Yeah. And that was just, mere weeks before COVID-19 became a full-blown pandemic.
Yeah, it was kind of like there were mutterings about it.
I definitely traveled with masks on that trip and sanitizing wipes. So I didn't necessarily wear my mask on the plane, but there were a few other people who had them. I had my mask. I feel like my mask kind of went on and off on the plane. Okay. So
yeah, it was a great trip. We had an awesome time. Austin is a really special place, and I hope to visit again. Sometime soon. It's a really great spot.
It is.
I mean, I feel like in the past, since we visited, I haven't gone to very many other places, so I should probably check out some other spots before just going right back there. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah. And if I could recommend anywhere else in Texas, I would definitely start with San Antonio.
Oh yeah? Okay.
I mean, let's start with the Alamo.
Sure.
You got to go, and you got to ask about a basement.
And don't piss on it.
No. Do not piss on the Alamo. No. And the river, they have a river walk there that when I was there, granted, this is 22 years ago, 22 years ago. It was just a lovely, the river walk there, and Savannah, Georgia Savannah, Georgia is beautiful. I would love to go back to Savannah.
Cool.
But we're talking about Texas. So, about Texas. And I've been through a good percentage of Texas, mostly eastern Texas.
Yeah.
And a little bit around the like Texarkana area, around the Louisiana border. So that was, I've talked about the children's theater tour I did. So, which is how I got to so many of the states that we've covered. And we spent a good amount of time in Texas. I had a big, like a CD binder of like, it was like maybe 100 CDs that I carried with me on tour because this was 2001, 2002. Giant binder of CDs stolen in Tyler, Texas.
Oh no.
It wasn't like I was not held up, but it was, it was stolen in a high school where we were performing.
Oh.
And I think like I had left some things backstage. I didn't want to leave it in the car. I think it was also really hot and was like, I don't want like my music collection to melt or.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I ended up having to replace all those CDs, and perhaps I've always been like, if I ever go back to Tyler, Texas, I'm going to like check out the used CD places, especially back when like it was 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
03,
but if you
04.
if it was a CD book, then there wouldn't be cases or anything like that. They'd just be loose discs.
Right. Well, they'd put them in a case or something. I don't know. I don't know what they were planning on doing. I mean, it was high school kids who stole it, but also like, did they look through it before they stole it?
I'm going to be honest. I'm, just thinking about your music tastes and, what is likely to have been the music taste of like a high school student in Eastern Texas. They probably were a little disappointed by their haul.
They clearly didn't go through it. Like there would have been a couple of things.
Sure. Yeah.
There would have been a couple of things in there that would have, but they wouldn't have been like, why are there 5 page, like UB40? What?
Yeah.
Like
UB40 is a perfect example of something that would be a head scratcher for a Texas teen.
Probably. And if it wasn't, then I am a little bit more okay. If the kid who took it looked through it and was like, Radiohead, ew, oh, wow, look at a UB40 treasure trove. Like, it is the greatest day of my life. Honestly, you have my blessing. I hope you enjoyed my CDs.
And hey, we are generalizing big time. For all we know, it could have made some kid's day, even though it ruined yours.
It definitely ruined mine. I definitely repurchased a lot of what was in that collection, or at least like burned copies.
Well, you were saying on a recent episode how you went to a lot of like used CD stores during this trip.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you found a lot of gems. Yeah.
I did. I think the first one I replaced, and then we can get back to talking about Texas and Lone Wolf McQuade. But the first one I replaced, the one that I was like, okay, this is the one that I need to have, was Radiohead Kid A.
Okay. It was that time.
It was that time. I think other contenders would have been Pet Sounds. I was really into Pet Sounds on that tour. Also, Cat Stevens' Greatest Hits was another one. I don't know if I ended up replacing that or I think I ended up just like burning copies of the albums, the Cat Stevens albums. But yeah, so like those were a couple that I was really into at that time. So
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, that's and like, there were other things that I did in Texas. I saw WWF at the time, house show in Beaumont, Texas.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. Watching wrestling in Texas, is definitely different than watching it in New York.
Yeah.
Different vibe. Different vibe. So
I wonder what Chuck Norris would think about pro wrestling. Has he ever sounded off?
Chuck Norris was a participant in, I forget which Survivor series it was, but he was the, I think, ringside enforcer for maybe Undertaker versus Yokozuna or something. It was a casket match. It might not have been Yokozuna because Although I think he was in a casket match once.
I've never heard of a casket match before. Don't explain it.
I mean, well, what do you think? Like, what do you think it would be?
No, honestly, there's nothing. There's nothing that's coming up.
1994, he was in the, whatchamacallit, the, like, special ring enforcer. Yeah, for Undertaker and...
Interesting.
I don't need to find the information.
Just from looking at him, I never got the impression that he would be somebody who would be drawn to the pro wrestling scene. And I guess there's, of course, that's probably a nice payday.
Oh yeah,
to do that kind of a thing. And at that time, 94, he was doing Walker, Texas Ranger then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was certainly busy, and I'm sure not like strapped for cash or anything.
Which Walker, Texas Ranger aired. Oh, no, wait, it didn't air on. I'm like, it aired on USA. No, it didn't air on USA until it was in syndication.
Right.
Several years later, when it would air, I would always watch the last few minutes of Walker, Texas Ranger because it would be on right before Raw. So. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was right. Casket match between Undertaker and Yokozuna. And, oh, yeah.
Dan, so literally nobody was doubting your memory about this.
And Norris he did get into a little action. He delivered a roundhouse kick, his signature move, to an interfering Jeff Jarrett.
I have no idea who that is.
That's okay.
Okay.
Double J Jeff Jarrett.
Oh, JJ, like JJ McQuade.
Yes. Exactly.
Interesting. So that's how we're going to get in to start talking about Lone Wolf McQuade.
Let's do it. Let's go.
All right. I'm going to do, this one is a pretty quick synopsis. Yeah. So let's blast through this and then we can get on our merry way. Texas Ranger J.J. McQuade wasn't designed for this world. He prefers solitude to a traditional family life. He finds the idea of working with a partner insulting, and his only companion is his pet wolf. But when a white-collar gun runner kills his only friend and kidnaps his daughter, McQuade teams up with rookie KO and an FBI agent who likes McQuade's style to track down the duplicitous Raleigh Wilkes and save his daughter. Chuck Norris plays J.J. McQuade. David Carradine is Raleigh Wilkes. Barbara Carrera is the widow Lola Richardson, who was married to Raleigh Wilkes's associate partner,
business partner.
I
think that's how he's introduced.
Something like that. And then ends up shacking up with McQuade with a brief questionable stop in a relationship with Raleigh. A little dicey.
Yeah.
Robert Beltran is KO, famously of Star Trek Voyager.
Yep, Star Trek Voyager.
Leon Isaac Kennedy is FBI agent Marcus Jackson, who's a delight. Mm-hmm. LQ Jones is retired Texas Ranger Dakota Brown, who we love. He's so good.
You know what I love about LQ Jones?
Tell me what you love about LQ Jones, Dan.
It's like if you can't get Sam Elliott, you get LQ Jones, and LQ Jones in his own right is fantastic and kind of carries his own reputation and brand with him. But I love how he plays like the Sam Elliott role.
The Sam Elliott role, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the like leathery. I mean, he's also older than Sam Elliott. So
yeah, he's the Sam Elliott. It's like Sam Elliott in Roadhouse. That's like his character in this.
Oh, yeah, where he's just like got the swagger, but like not the responsibilities.
Right. Like, yeah, he doesn't give a shit about anything because he's retired, but yet he still thinks that he can do all the things that he did.
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
He can, but
yeah. But as we say in the synopsis, he pays for it. He's the friend. He's kind of like McQuade's only kind of friend. He's a retired Texas Ranger. He gets it.
He's a lone wolf in his own right.
Look, nobody in this movie is a lone wolf, first of all. McQuade is a very codependent person who likes to think of himself as being a lone wolf.
Oh, totally.
To the point that like he doesn't even live alone because he has a pet. He's got a wolf. So
the whole thing is, it's really a psychological breakdown. The plot and the conflict with David Carradine's character, who like what is he trying to do? Is it like land?
So David Carradine is a gun runner.
He's a gun runner.
He's He's a gun runner, and he is kind of hired out by this other like bigger, I guess the person who actually like acquires the guns from the military, who has like a cover of like a pinball machine wholesaler or something. He that guy's an interesting character. Oh, we didn't talk about him. I forget that character's name.
Oh, I
know that actor was an Ewok the same year.
He was in Return of the Jedi. Oh, yes, that guy. Yes, now I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Oh,
he's a peculiar guy.
Yes.
So the whole thing is about running guns, but I want to talk first about the and Dan. Bookmark that for a second, but I want to start talking about the opening scene, which is a different type of theft, which is horse theft.
Oh yeah.
I love a movie that opens up, we've got a completely unrelated, it's like Beverly Hills Cop, where it opens up and he's like in the middle of some other pursuit. And in this one, we got McQuade up on the top of this cliff and he's got the sniper rifle, and we have all the other, like, I guess they're state troopers or something who are trying to like get this horse thief.
Right.
And who just keeps on like picking them off one by one. And, but in comes McQuade.
Oh shit.
Oh shit is right. Yeah. And then just like, I don't know, makes a whole mess of the situation. I mean, they get the guy, but like, certainly there are other ways to have handled this.
I mean, going into this movie, my only expectation of this movie was that at some point you'd hear his superior go like, "Damn it, McQuade," or something.
And honestly, his superior's right.
Like going back to the Beverly Hills Cop comparison, which it's the opening that just establishes, the character. And by the way, I have not watched the whole thing, but we got a good solid chunk into Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, and in terms of a legacy sequel so far, it's checking the boxes for me.
And you will have already seen this part if you're part of the way into it, but one of the things that Beverly Hills Cop Axel F does that I was just thinking we never see anymore is cop cars running into each other.
Yeah.
And when it shows that, and it's like, we're used to seeing more of the boxy, like Chevy Caprice cop cars crashing into each other. But here we see like the newer ones, and it's very satisfying. And I love it. Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F is great. But here's the thing is like Axel Foley and JJ McQuade are on the opposite ends of the charisma spectrum.
Oh,
where like,
completely.
Yeah.
I would. Chuck Norris, not on my Mount Rushmore of action stars.
Oh, not at all. I mean, I haven't really watched any of like the canon films, like Chuck Norris movies.
I'm trying to, sorry to interrupt again. No. I'm trying to remember which one it was. If it was like a Force of One or the Octagon, but God. One of them has like voiceover. He's like inner monologue. You hear his inner monologue. And if you think Chuck Norris is terrible acting in just like regular scenes, his interior monologue voiceovers are wonderfully awful.
So, I'm gonna tell you, Dan, about something that I've never actually told anybody about, but I think about it a lot. When I was a kid, I was hanging out with a friend of mine. I was maybe like 8 or 9 at this time. And I had a friend over and we were just like hanging out outside, and there was something about this guy. he was just a little different from, I don't know, everybody else. You know, he didn't have the charisma that some of my other friends had, I guess you can say. He didn't seem to have the interest that a lot of the other friends had. But at one moment, I like looked into his eyes and I just saw nothing. And I was like, and I was just thinking like, wow. I wish he has such a boring name that it's like ungoogleable, but like, I think all the time, like, whatever happened to him? I never hear anything about him from like people I know who I grew up with. And it's like, I just saw nothing. And it's that spark. It's the kind of thing that you see in like an Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
But what I saw in this boy is the same thing that I see in Chuck Norris, where it's just like, there's a facade and there's just not much going on back there.
There's a face, there's a beard.
Yes. And by the way, for anybody watching on Spotify or YouTube, first of all, I was going to trim my beard yesterday because it's crazy hot here in Portland this week, but I was like, I've got to keep it for the Chuck Norris episode. And also I've got my shirt totally unbuttoned.
You kept
Chuck
it for
Norris style.
This was the first movie he had the beard.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his signature beard.
I mean, yeah, it kind of keeps him from needing to, you know, express himself with any
the thing that he's probably been dyeing red since like 1993.
Oh, seriously. Dude is like, what, 84 years old?
He is an elderly man.
He's old, yeah. I mean, I haven't seen him. I think the last thing I saw him do was in Expendables 2, which I thought his part in Expendables 2
and wasn't his name something like Lone Wolf or something like that?
They reference him as a lone wolf. They're like, oh, what? He's not going to stick around? And they're like, he's kind of a lone wolf, which they do in the, as a fan, as someone who, with an appreciation of 80s action movies, I don't love Chuck Norris, but I appreciated that nod and his role in it. He pretty much just like, at one point you get that like he used to work with them and like they go to him and they're like, okay, all right, thanks for hooking us up. And then he like shows up and helps them like fight and he doesn't like even talk in that scene. He just, like all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, there's grenades coming from over there now. Who's that? Oh, it's Chuck Norris. Oh, nice.
So Chuck Norris got his start because he was working with Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee was basically just like, was he doing stunts or something? And was like, you should do more stuff on camera.
Which he trained, right. He trained with Bruce Lee, and then Bruce Lee wanted him to be in his movies, like wanted him to be a villain in I read the Chuck Norris Wikipedia page this morning. So if you're wondering how if you're like, oh, have you had this knowledge? And by the way, that was Daniel Frischman of who was in Return of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah.
Who also plays the I guess gun runner in this Falcone, that's his name, right? Yeah.
So, just to go back to Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, I kind of get the impression that like Bruce Lee was like pranking him because like Bruce Lee filled with charisma or it was like kind of I'll look better on screen if I'm like opposite this guy who is so boring.
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, because I've never seen one of these Bruce Lee movies where he plays the villain. But it was, I mean, he was also like, let's also acknowledge he was a all-American karate champion. Sure. And was an international karate champion. He was the world karate champion. So legit. His first movie was in The Wrecking Crew with Dean Martin, which I think was like a Dirty Dozen ripoff. Kind of, yeah. And I don't know if they came out in the
Tate in that
year, if it was one of those. Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? I think that's what it is. So it's not a Dirty Dozen. Never mind. I'm thinking of the wrong thing. I think, that was the Sharon Tate movie. Yeah. So it was The Way of the Dragon, or Return of the Dragon, which is how it was released in the United States, where Chuck Norris was Bruce Lee's nemesis. And yes, Bruce Lee's charisma must have seemed amplified by 1,000 when opposite Chuck Norris.
So I'm not saying anything to take away the accomplishments that Chuck Norris has, you know, as a martial artist. He is certainly no Steven Seagal in the way that you're just like, I don't know if I buy this show that he's putting on, but like, you know, Chuck Norris, you can see that he's talented. You can see that he trains. You can see he takes all of that part of his life very seriously. Mm-hmm. Anybody who knows anything about Chuck Norris's politics knows that he is extremely right-wing Christian.
Wrote a whole book about it in 1998.
Yeah. And he's very far right. And so a lot of that does shine through, you know, especially with all of the gun porn that you see in this movie and
like the Border Patrol stuff. And
oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Absolutely. And I don't know. I will say this, though. I did really enjoy him and the way that his lore is captured in Sidekicks with Jonathan Brandis.
Okay. Sidekicks. I never saw that.
You never saw Sidekicks?
I never saw Sidekicks.
It was always on like cable or something, so I watched it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But Chuck Norris plays himself, and in a lot of scenes, he is a, you know, Jonathan Brandis's character's like imagination version of himself, where it's like Chuck Norris will come in and help him save the day against like Joe Piscopo, who's the like Cobra Kai type, you know, karate class instructor who keeps shitting on Jonathan Brandis. Yeah, Joe Piscopo. And then of course at the end there's like this big scene at a karate tournament because they have to be at karate tournaments where Chuck Norris is like the guest and he like joins their dojo so that they can compete, and it's a whole ridiculous thing and whatever.
I feel like do you think was it like Chuck the Truck is from Foot Fist Way? Is a Chuck Norris homage?
I don't know, because Chuck the Truck definitely has a lot more charisma.
Oh, actually,
and also is you know, like, you know, drinking and doing drugs and all sorts of fun stuff.
I guess, no, good point. No, it just made me think about that with the tournament where he's the guest. It's like the same, is similar.
Well, it's more of a Karate Kid type thing.
Yeah. So no, I thought and then as you were saying that sentence, I was going to end it with Dodgeball, where Chuck Norris has a cameo as one of the judges at the finals who gives the win. Spoiler alert
for a different
Dodgeball.
Movie. Yeah.
20 years ago this summer, Dodgeball came out. But I remember seeing it in the theater. Really enjoyed it. And but Chuck
talking
Norris
about a true underdog story.
A true underdog story, yeah. So Chuck Norris gives the win to Vince Vaughn's team, and
the Average Joes, is that right?
Average Joes, and of course Ben Stiller has a wonderful line. He's fucking Chuck Norris.
Yeah, and he's right.
It's not a brilliantly written line, but the delivery of it by Ben Stiller is quite wonderful.
Well, and also it's like, I guess around then, you know, the mythology of like Chuck Norris as some sort of mythological creature.
It was like,
yeah,
I think when it was just kind of hitting the internet.
Yeah.
So
that's when like the memes, you know, the proto memes really began.
So, and speaking of other, true, you know, Hollywood people who show up in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, cause I think we've already mentioned two, we might as well round it out. It was Steve McQueen encouraged Chuck Norris to start taking acting classes.
Well, I mean, anybody in their right mind would encourage him to take acting classes.
Well,
I don't know if he ever went.
Steve McQueen was like, yeah, you have potential. And talk about another incredibly charismatic actor, Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Yeah. who Damian Lewis plays him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that
is true.
Excellent casting. So anyway,
he plays him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but Leonardo DiCaprio plays the character who could potentially be in The Great Escape if he had not been replaced by Steve McQueen. Was that the thing?
Oh, yes. Right. Yeah.
That's such a good movie. I really like that one.
It's a movie that gets better, and I think I've only now seen it twice, but I appreciated it much more upon my second viewing.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
I'll go back for a third. I'm a Tarantino fan.
Yeah. But instead of talking about good movies, let's talk about Lone Wolf McQuade.
Oh, yes, indeed. Let's talk about Lone Wolf McQuade. So, did you do your pros and cons list?
So I didn't do my what I liked, what I didn't like list about this one because it's not that kind of a movie. I feel like we're all kind of on the same page about Lone Wolf McQuade, as a society. It's not known to be a great movie. There aren't people out there who this is their favorite movie. It's fun watch. It's a fun watch.
There's somebody out there.
Sure. There were certain elements that I found interesting. His beer consumption was certainly, uncharacteristic of Chuck Norris. And, I felt like it was an interesting character quality. I like when, and we're getting into spoiler territory here, but when he gets buried alive in his super truck, which is ridiculous.
Oh,
and
yes.
he pours the beer on himself and everything. It's just oh boy.
Oh no, absolutely. The first thing he does, crack open that Schlitz or whatever it is.
That piping hot beer that's been sitting in his truck. And yeah. Also when they're there's a horse
spinach.
There's a horse race scene where there is also a karate competition.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right. The exhibition where David Carradine just brings up jabronis and kicks their asses.
I love it. It's so bizarre. It's so weird. It'll never happen in real life, but for the purposes of this movie, it works. Because we've set up Sally McQuade as being a horse rider, which is JJ's daughter. And, to have that all work, you kind of need to just be all right, I guess we're having a kung fu exhibition at this horse racetrack.
Yeah. Yes. In the parking lot at the racetrack.
Yeah.
Of course.
So weird.
Why not? Let's bring a bunch of horses around and then, we'll have that. We'll have karate.
There was also that scene where McQuade there's some catered event and he's going up to get a beer and they're just oh, we have Heineken and they mentioned some other imported beers and he's all bummed because they're all there's no domestic shit beer.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
But they do have it. It's just hidden. It's so weird.
It's come on, where do you keep the good stuff?
Yeah, right.
By good, I mean terrible to everybody but me.
Yeah. Oh, here's something. Okay. A couple episodes ago, we did Badlands.
Yeah.
I loved how he basically lived in Kato from Badlands' house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The dude in Badlands who lives out in the middle of nowhere has a little storm shelter in the middle of the pasture or whatever it is.
Miles and miles of flat, uninhabited land in all directions, and then just this house.
This shitty little shack with just who knows what thrown in there. Nothing makes sense, but JJ McQuade basically lives there.
That's where he keeps his beer and his bed.
Oh my God.
And his wolf.
And his wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much that movie just kind of is screw it. This is the movie that we're making. Let's just go all in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was kind of establishing the Chuck Norris brand.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, Dan, what were your thoughts about this movie?
I didn't like it. I didn't, I mean, I didn't enjoy it that much. And it was kind of like, all right, like this is not a great movie, but plot wise, it's along the lines of better shitty action movies, like Jean-Claude Van Damme's Nowhere to Run.
Well, also, it's like, this is 1983. Like, this is years before a lot of the other action movies that feel more like this one.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because you do have a few other Chuck Norris movies before this, like Good Guys Wear Black or A Force of One. So he does a few others that are like this, like the one where there's I think Invasion USA is after this. That's where the United States is being invaded by ninjas.
Oh my God.
And he fights the ninjas. I think one of them is where he it helps the police catch drug dealers by teaching the police karate.
My God.
Yeah, I mean, David Carradine is, I would say, the best part of the best part of the movie is David Carradine.
I like his lilac Argyle sweater at the end.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, what's up with that? Like, he's David Carradine, and he's it's kind of like, this is the role that I think Bill in Kill Bill. This is one of the roles, this and Kane and Kung Fu, that Bill and Kill Bill kind of harken back to. So, and I like him very much in those movies.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I'm glad I've seen it now, just because I really haven't seen a lot of Chuck Norris movies, and now I can, at least if I ever am in the situation where I have to talk about why I don't think Chuck Norris is very good, I have some evidence. I've got some text evidence to go back to here.
Yeah, this movie it's known to be a punchline for the longest time. It's like, you mentioned Lone Wolf McQuade when you want to talk about lowbrow cinema, basically.
Yeah, but it's not fun. Like, it's not even like the whatever it was, Octagon or Force of One, the one where he does the voiceover that I was talking about before. Like, that was at least like, oh my God, this is terrible, but I can't look away.
I could see, ironically, Lone Wolf McQuade, I feel like would be best watched with a group of people. Are we
going into our what are we doing?
Oh, not quite yet, because there were a few other thoughts that I had about this movie. Mostly, so first of all, I feel like this is one where you got to watch it with a bunch of people, because there's so much where you just need to turn to somebody and be like, can you believe that just happened? But what I just wanted to also I guess underscore a little bit more is that the lack of charisma that J.J. McQuade has, it really makes it hard to root for this kind of renegade Texas Ranger when, the entire force is trying to shut him. The state is trying to shut him down, basically. And it's they're right. They're right to do this. When you see this scene at the beginning, when there's this horse thief, he could have disabled this horse thief without having to go through this thing where he's spraying bullets at everybody. He could have shot the main dude in the leg, and then the troopers could have had the upper hand, essentially.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, as I alluded to earlier, John, this really is a psychological exploration of what happens when you perhaps give an individual too much power, too much latitude, and too much space, not enough oversight. What happens when you allow someone to be a lone wolf? and who suffers? Who suffers?
That's a great question, Dan. I think we, the audience, suffer.
In this case, yes.
He is not a lone wolf. Strip him of that title.
No, but that's the thing. He's delusional.
He's delusional.
So, yeah.
So, all right, let's move on from this because we're going to have so much better things to talk about in the next episode. We're coming off of so many classics, and this is truly a valley in quality. So, Dan, what would you do to bring Lone Wolf McQuade back 2024 styles?
All right. So I had some ideas while we were having this discussion, because my only forethought was that a biopic about Chuck Norris would be okay, and you can't do it now because it's been done and like done to perfection. But a biopic in the style of the Weird Al Yankovic story. But like also, I think the window for that has also passed. So what would I do with it? Okay. Just a TV series would be interesting. I was thinking it would be interesting to show the story, like a remake of Lone Wolf McQuade, but from the perspective of David Carradine's character. And like actually make him the protagonist, and maybe there's like something else that we don't know about the story that is, and like you tweak it a little bit so that like maybe the bad guys are really like good, and they're doing things like they're cutting corners because they're like, you know, the red tape keeps us from getting this insulin to people who can't afford it, and we're getting them affordable insulin. We just have to bring it in from Mexico or Canada. How about Canada? How about north of the border?
Yeah.
How about we're bringing in pharmaceuticals instead of guns? And maybe Lone Wolf McQuade is like, I mean, I know it's like he's a Texas Ranger. That's iconic. And we're talking about this in Texas, but what if he was a retired Texas Ranger who moved up to, I don't know, Washington State? or
you're onto something. You're onto something interesting, and it goes back to talking about Beverly Hills Cop, where it's a law enforcement official from a different place who is working out of his jurisdiction in a different state. That's maybe more of a fish out of water situation as well, and where he's like playing by Texas Ranger rules. But, you know, maybe he's up in Vermont, and, you know, and the lifestyle is just very different. So I like,
you don't get a damn it, McQuade. It's just, JJ.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's fun.
Yeah. Just, I mean, I was thinking about that as cause you made some really good points about how, like, yeah, this is not one of those cases where like the bureaucracy is stifling the ability to solve crimes. They're stifling his ability to get people killed and injured and to get property destroyed.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like if you just tweak it a little bit and bring it, and actually you have the bad guy be like, you know, kind of this out of control, Texas Ranger. And everything was fine until this guy moved up here.
Absolutely. Yeah. The idea of like, I guess the hubris and the machismo of a Texas Ranger thinking that they are better than everybody else. And meanwhile, they're just like ruining ongoing investigations and, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That's
really
fun.
Stepped in it this time, McQuade.
Yeah. Going back to what you were saying earlier about a Weird Al style, you know, biopic. That's the other thing though. Weird Al has charisma. Chuck Norris also is a very divisive person, whereas Weird Al, I think, is just either you're not familiar with him or you love him. And
right.
And Chuck Norris has been so co-opted by the right as a figurehead for their politics that it makes watching movies with him or anything about him a little bit harder to watch, because you can't separate, I don't know, the martial art from the martial artist.
Well, because also,
come on, Dan, that was really good.
Like the martial art from the martial artist. That was, you know what? I'm gonna fess up. I was guilty of not fully listening in that moment.
Oh, come on, man.
Because I have to explain why I didn't just erupt into hysterics at that line. But what I was thinking was that, first of all, I feel like you could almost, if you were doing the weird version of the Chuck Norris story, you'd work that lack of charisma in, I suppose. But it also, again, does not, it's the type of thing that really, I'm not saying that Weird Al is the only celebrity that approach would have ever worked for, but I think they nailed it, and we can't do anything like that for a while. Mm-hmm. So, but coming back to Chuck Norris, yeah, I think also is because he's not really acting. He's not disappearing into a role. This is not Gary Oldman we're talking about. So it's like, you can't separate the martial art from the martial artist, because it's Chuck Norris on screen. Like, I know he plays himself in Sidekicks, but come on, he plays himself in pretty much everything. It's not like he ever did some, like, you know, tour de force where he plays, like a, an aging, I don't know.
No, he's always playing a Texas Ranger or some sort of law enforcement official, or, something like that.
Yeah. Walker, Texas Ranger. Yeah, I mean, that's
exactly. He built his entire career on being the good guy who's on the right side of the law. And
but there was also an animated Chuck Norris series. Do you remember that?
I kind of do. It feels familiar.
The two-dimensional Chuck Norris was more three-dimensional than Chuck Norris.
That is true. That is certainly true. Yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult to to figure out, like, what else do you do with a movie like this or a person like Chuck Norris. I feel like MacGruber is the best that we're gonna get to, like, a proper send up of a Chuck Norris style character, not performance, because MacGruber certainly has, way more dimensions.
Oh, I would say between MacGruber and Ben Stiller's role in Tropic Thunder,
sure,
which I know is not simply, it's lampooning like an entire group of actors, but I feel like the satirical take on that has been done, and MacGruber is probably the closest thing to an actual, like, a Chuck Norris parody.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad for it, because MacGruber is the best. I do think that it would be fun to have, and there have, of course, been a lot of those, I guess they were like Adult Swim shows, like Eagle Heart, I think was that Chris Elliott one? I think that kind of captures a lot of this type of thing. While I was watching it, I know that this isn't like a good idea, but it's just kind of fun to think about. But since we do talk about, like, what would we possibly do to bring back these movies, be they amazing like Nashville or Badlands, or opposite end of the spectrum, Lone Wolf McQuade. And I was thinking about, like, Lone Wolf McQuade. Hey, you know who I like? Jack Quaid. Wouldn't it be funny if there was, like, Lone Wolf Jack Quaid? And
Lone Wolf,
and it was like a series of, like, Jack Quaid being some sort of, like, because also he doesn't look like a Texas Ranger type, he's but he's, I think The Boys is wrapping up, so coming off of The Boys, he's got some time on his hands and could do something fun and goofy. And also it's like he hangs in comedy circles and does a lot of really goofy stuff, and has really set him apart from, like, his father's legacy, especially. I mean, he has very different politics from his father, and also just but he's got the charisma of both of his parents, and I
have definitely moved from Team Quaid to Team Ryan.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely,
yeah. Oh, and oh boy, there was something else that came to mind. Oh, it would be fun. I would see it if Jody Hill and Danny McBride remade it.
And I was thinking about Danny McBride too, like doing a remake of this with Danny McBride. It seems like a no-brainer.
Who better? Who better?
Who better? Yeah, I guess if
they would nail it.
Yeah. Well, it's like you already have the Will Forte style version of this. Get the Danny McBride style of this.
Yeah. Right. Which I feel is like that's definitely fitting to.
You get Will Ferrell as the like Dakota, the retired version. It's like you bring in kind of the Danny McBride, Jody Hill players. And you got a lot to work with there.
So, Walton Goggins.
Oh, he'd be the David Carradine type. He's
David Carradine.
1,000%.
You wouldn't have him be Falcone?
No, Falcone's a bit of a small character, no pun intended.
Oh.
Yeah, that is not a stature joke, but it is a small character.
No.
Whereas like the main bad guy is Raleigh Wilkes.
It's not a major role.
Yeah. Goggins,
not a role befitting of a Walton
and
Goggins,
especially coming off of Fallout, where it's like he's getting a lot of attention. You got to put him in, and he's such a good bad guy too.
Yeah. Though speaking of, I guess, justified cast members, Timothy Olyphant would also be fabulous in the David Carradine role.
You don't have to sell me on Timothy Olyphant in any role.
I know.
I mean, I could also see him being, FBI agent or something like that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Or, you split the character, the main like bad guy into like two guys and you have it be a team. Although Walton Goggins and Timothy Olyphant, they've shared the screen together plenty of times.
Yeah.
So could see that happening. I don't know. This is a shitty movie.
it's a shitty. Hey, folks, Starfighters, it's a shitty movie, but it's not even a shitty movie that's worth like checking out or saying like, let's get drunk and watch Lone Wolf McQuade. There are better shitty movies to get drunk and watch.
I think that there is a drinking game where you're supposed to drink every time that somebody says the word Ranger, but you'd be blasted in like minute 5.
Without a doubt. Yeah. You'd have alcohol poisoning a half hour in.
My God. Yeah. Well, Dan, let's scrub this one off of us and talk about Utah. What are we talking about on our Utah episode?
All right. Well, we're going to Utah, and I know that for many of our state visits, we have been avoiding the major cities, but in this case, we are going to dive straight into Salt Lake City because we're talking about SLC PUNK, that is written and directed by James Marandino, starring Matthew Lillard, Michael Gorgian, and Beth Gish. And that came out in 1998.
We got Devon Sawa.
Devon Sawa
Jason
is in it.
Segel is in it. It's great.
Indeed. Christopher McDonald.
Christopher McDonald is fantastic. We'll talk about it all in the next episode.
Absolutely. All
right.
It's got a great cast, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so looking forward to revisiting SLC PUNK.
A true cult classic. Dan, as you are driving your souped up truck out of a ditch that's been covered in dirt, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.